afternoon. You're watching the English newscast here on Future Television. I'm Linda Tamim, and these are today's top stories. Syrian rebels launch an offensive aimed at breaking a government siege of eastern Aleppo, where the UN estimates some 300,000 people are trapped with dwindling food and medical supplies. On the occasion of Army Day, Army Chief General Jean Ahwaji commends the efforts of his troops to keep Lebanon's border safe and maintain civil peace inside the country. And visiting Iranian official Alauddin Boroujerdi says Tehran will not hesitate to offer Lebanon all the aid it needs and reiterates his country isn't interfering in the country's presidential crisis. Syrian rebels have launched an offensive aimed at breaking a government siege of eastern Aleppo, where the UN estimates some 300,000 people are trapped with dwindling food and medical supplies. A rebel alliance that includes the Jabhat Fatah al-Sham group, which was formerly known as the Al-Qaeda-linked Nusra Front, and the Ahrar al-Sham group said it had taken army positions in the southwestern government-held parts of the city within the first few hours of launching a battle to break the siege imposed on rebel-held areas. Elsewhere in the country, 5 crew members were killed as a Russian military chopper was shot down in the rebel-held Idlib province. Russia's defense ministry was cited as saying that the helicopter had been shot down after delivering humanitarian aid to the city of Aleppo as it made its way back to Russia's main airbase in Syria. Army Chief General Jean Ahwaji has commended the efforts of his troops to keep Lebanon's borders safe and maintain civil peace inside the country. The Lebanese army continuously pounds the hideouts of militants along the country's northeastern border to keep them at bay. It is believed that thousands of Jabhat Fatah al-Sham, formerly known as Nusra Front, and ISIS militants are holed up on the rugged outskirts of Arsal, as well as neighboring Ras Baalbek and Al-Qa'a. Ahwaji was speaking to troops on the occasion of the 71st anniversary of the Lebanese army's establishment. As in the previous 2 years, there was no ceremony held this year due to the presidential vacuum. Ahwaji also remembered the country's fallen service members and pledged to the families of the 9 kidnapped soldiers to continue staunch efforts to reveal their fate, release them, and ensure their safe return. Lebanese officials saluted the military for maintaining security and stability in the country on the occasion of Army Day. Lebanese Forces Chief Samir Jaja tweeted, quote, "The best gift we can give to the army on its holiday is allowing it to have complete strategic, military and security prerogatives." Future Movement leader Mpisat Hariri said Army Day was an occasion to thank everyone in the military for their sacrifices and for showing resilience in order to protect national sovereignty. "We are all behind the army in the face of terrorism, extremism and all plans to defect from the state and the rule of law," end of quote. He renewed his calls for the army to exclusively possess arms in reference to his rival party Hezbollah, which has a powerful military branch seen illegitimate by many. Resigned Justice Minister Ashraf Rifi echoed Hariri's comments, saying the military was the only institution which should be in control of security along the border. As he said, illegal weapons are rejected. Rifi, like other officials, used the occasion to talk about the 9 remaining soldiers being held captive by ISIS and said their case should be a top priority. Former President Michel Sleiman said the army and the government must act quickly to free them. The Lebanese army has arrested 8 people during raids in the border town of Arsal suspected of belonging to militant groups. The army is currently questioning the 8 individuals who were detained after raiding the house of Hassan Hojairi, who is wanted for killing Khalid Hojairi. In addition to the arrests, the army is continuing to pound militant posts in the rugged outskirts of Arsal in the Wadi al-Khail region. And still in Lebanon, Alauddin Boroujerdi, a high-ranking Iranian official, says Tehran wouldn't hesitate to offer the country all the aid it needs and reiterated that his country wasn't interfering in Lebanon's presidential crisis. Boroujerdi, the chairman of the Iranian Parliamentary Committee for National Security and Foreign Policy, said official negotiations were conducted regarding the Iranians' grants to the Lebanese army. Speaking after meeting with Foreign Minister Gibran Bassil at Bustas Palace, the Iranian official explained that his country was always keen to support the military. He also expressed belief that Lebanese rivals will be able to elect a new head of state and assured that Iran will not interfere in that process. Boroujerdi is also expected to meet with Parliament Speaker Nabih Berri, Prime Minister Tamam Slam, a Hezbollah delegation, and Palestinian factions in Lebanon. Multiple obstacles are keeping Syrian refugee children in Lebanon out of school despite the efforts of the UN Refugee Agency and the Lebanese government to integrate them into the country's educational system. Of the Syrian refugees registered with the UNHCR in Lebanon, only about 150,000 of these children have enrolled in public schools for the 2015-2016 school year, according to the ministry, underlining concerns about an entire generation of Syrian children who are growing up without education.
We know that over 90% are in debt because they cannot provide for their basic needs. This vulnerable situation and the poor situation refugees are living in affect mostly also children. Parents, unfortunately, are having to rely on their children. They're having to send their children to work because they need them to also help them provide for the rest of the family. All of these factors also affect the access to education for Syrian refugee children in Lebanon. One of them is the limited places in schools. Although there has been a tremendous increase in the past 3 years of the numbers of children enrolled in school. It started with 40,000 in 2013 and increased up to over 150,000 last year. Still, they face a number of challenges in accessing and in staying in schools. Being forced to help their parents provide for the family is one of them. The availability or non-availability of transportation and the cost of transportation is another. The language barriers is also another. Unfortunately, being out of school exposes refugee children to greater risks, and education is the most important thing to continue a normal life for these school-aged children. Most of these children used to go to school normally in Syria, and the vast majority of them never had to work in Syria or never had to help their families in Lebanon. And after years of exile, unfortunately, we know that these realities have changed drastically for many of these children.
Coming up next, one policeman is killed and 4 more wounded in a truck bombing at a foreign compound in the Afghan capital, Kabul. Stay tuned. Turkey has summoned the German chargé d'affaires a day after German authorities stopped Turkey's president from addressing a rally in Cologne via video link. A spokeswoman for the German embassy in Ankara says the ambassador, who was summoned originally, was not in town. Tens of thousands of supporters of President Recep Tayyip Erdogan rallied in Cologne on Sunday to show their opposition to a failed coup on July 15th, which had aimed to topple him. Hours before the demonstration, Germany's constitutional court banned an application to show live speeches from Turkey by politicians, including Erdogan, amid fears that political tensions in Turkey could spill over into Germany. The decision sparked anger in Turkey, with the presidential spokesman calling the ban unacceptable and a violation of the freedom of expression and the right to free assembly. The Islamic State has called on its group members to carry out jihad in Russia in a 9-minute video released on YouTube on Sunday. The video shows a man driving a car, his face covered by a balaclava, saying, quote, "Listen, Putin, we will come to Russia too, and we will kill you and the Russian people there too, God willing. My brothers, go and make jihad, kill them." It was not immediately possible to independently verify the video, but the link to the footage was published on a Telegram messaging account used by the militant group. Pope Francis said it was wrong to identify Islam with violence and that social injustice and idolatry of money were among the prime causes of terrorism. The Pope was speaking to reporters aboard the plane taking him back to Rome after a 5-day trip to Poland. Francis was responding to a question about the killing on July 26th of an 85-year-old Roman Catholic priest by knife-wielding attackers who burst into church service in western France, forced the priest to his knees and slit his throat. The attack was claimed by Islamic State. When he started the trip on Wednesday, Francis said the killing of the priest and a string of other attacks were proof the world is at war, but that it was not caused by religion. He told reporters on the plane that lack of economic opportunities for young people in Europe was also to blame for terrorism. Moving on to Afghanistan, 1 policeman was killed and 4 more were wounded in a truck bombing and ensuing gunfight at a foreign compound in the capital Kabul early this morning. The bombing occurred outside the North Gate Hotel on the eastern outskirts of Kabul after the attackers detonated a truck bomb. 3 gunmen then tried to enter the facility, but police intercepted them, triggering a gun battle. The 3 were reportedly killed during the operation. The Taliban militant group later claimed responsibility for the attack. Andrew Lloyd Webber's award-winning musical Cats returns to Broadway for the first time in 16 years, with Britain's Leona Lewis in the role of Grisabella for the revival. Webber's fan favorite opened its revival at the Neil Simon Theatre, just a block away from its original home at the Winter Garden Theatre. After opening on the West End in 1981, the musical came across the Atlantic in 1982 and went through 7,485 performances in 18 years before closing in 2000. Since its world premiere, Cats has been presented in over 30 countries and has been translated into 15 languages.
Well, I think, having seen it myself in preview, I think if you come see it, I think you probably won't remember it exactly as it was before. I mean, nobody's memory of something they saw probably 15, 20 years ago is exactly right. And I think you'll probably find that it's absolutely the Cats that you remember. But I know we've done a bit of work on it. We've condensed a couple of things. There's one number of a song in the show I was never particularly keen on myself, and that's gone now, which is great pleasure. But we've done quite a lot of work, and I think I'm quite pleased with it. It's a great joy, really. I mean, I always think with Cats, the wonderful thing was the luck I had in getting permission to be able to set the T.S. Eliot poems, because the T.S. Eliot estate obviously pretty jealously guard his work, you know. And I was amazed in the end that we got permission and his widow allowed me to do them, and to, in the end, use quite a lot of work from his, not just Noel Foster's book of Practical Cats, but from his other writing. And so I think in the end, T.S. Eliot is the heart of it, and everything we've done with it, I hope, is a celebration of that and also theatre, because it was quite an adventure when we did it originally.
This marks the end of our bulletin for today. Now for a reminder of our headlines. Syrian rebels launch an offensive aimed at breaking a government siege of eastern Aleppo, where the UN estimates some 300,000 people are trapped with dwindling food and medical supplies. On the occasion of Army Day, Army Chief General Jean Ahwaji commends the efforts of his troops to keep Lebanon's borders safe and maintain civil peace inside the country. And visiting Iranian official Alauddin Boroujerdi says Tehran will not hesitate to offer Lebanon all the aid it needs, and reiterates his country isn't interfering in the country's presidential crisis. Those are your top stories for this Monday. I'm Lynette Simina. Thank you all for watching.